welcome to City Life. Coming up today on the programme, Antarctica, New Zealand, St John Annual Appeal, After Socks and Art with Warren Feeney. But first, it's coming to the end of Bowel Cancer Awareness Month, so today we're going to chat about it. Welcome Associate Professor Richard Gearry and Pete Smith. Good to have you both on the programme.
Thank you. Hello.
Now, firstly, I've invited you both here as you're both part of, or both involved with the Bowel and Liver Trust Canterbury. Can you tell me about that?
So the Bowel and Liver Trust is a great organisation that's been going in Canterbury now for many years, and the major role of the trust is to raise awareness and to raise money for research and equipment for the Canterbury region to promote bowel health. And it's not something that we tend to talk about very much, Kanita. You know, it's something that often is swept under the table, not dinner time conversation, but it's important to know that the Bowel and Liver Trust has really done a great job at promoting research that's shown us that 1 in 17 New Zealanders by the age of 75 will develop bowel cancer. 1 in 250 Cantabrians will get inflammatory bowel disease, which is Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, one of the highest rates in the Western world. And also 1 in 100 people will get celiac disease in Canterbury as well. And these are all common conditions that we don't really talk about too much.
Why are the rates so high here in New Zealand?
It's hard to know, but clearly I think part of it is that there is an awareness about it. Through research that the Bowel and Liver Trust has supported, people are a bit more aware of it. But we don't really understand what it is in our environment that may predispose us to some of these illnesses.
Do you think it's what we're eating?
It's possible, but I think that the data isn't there, and that's where the Bowel and Liver Trusts come in, trying to fund research to understand these things in a better way.
Okay. How can we sort of make this more aware?
Well, I think things like the month of men's health that we're having at the moment is a really important thing, and the key thing is to talk about it. It's very easy to talk about things, and if you've got problems, go to your doctor. You know, if you've got a problem with your bowels, if you've got all of a sudden get a change in your bowels or bleeding from the bowels or symptoms that aren't explained, go and see your doctor, and they're the best people to work out what the best tests are to do in that regard. So
let's look at the tests that are taken.
So if we're going to investigate the gut, there's a number of different ways to do it, and the best way, or most efficient way, is where we have a look inside the gut with an endoscope, which is a flexible instrument that allows us to go in either through the mouth down to the stomach, or we can go in from below through the bottom and have a look around the colon, and that's where we find colon cancer, and that's where a colonoscopy is one of the best tests to diagnose that. Okay,
so do you get everybody to have one of those tests?
Not everyone. It depends very much on the types of symptoms that people may have, but certainly if we're going to look at bowel cancer and the best way of preventing it, then a colonoscopy is the best way to do that. Okay. Whether someone needs one or not is something they should discuss with their GP.
Okay, is it more common among men?
Bowel cancer rates are high amongst men, and one of the problems again is that men tend to sit on their problems, if you excuse the pun. They don't tend to actually go out and talk to people about it, and the key thing for bowel cancer is that if we find it early, we can prevent people dying from this disease.
Okay.
It's all about finding it early before it spreads, and a colonoscopy is a very good way of doing it.
Now, Pete, you're going for a checkup. Why have you decided to go for one?
Well, I thought I'd get in literally behind the project. You know, I think they need some examples. They need some people that are prepared to do it. If it encourages others, well then that's certainly well worthwhile. But I'm in that age bracket, Kanita, really, where probably it should be looked at. It's just another part of your warrant of fitness, if you like. Get it done. I'd met Richard, obviously, through my involvement with Bowel and Liver Trust. I'd let him take my head off. So, yeah, as far as it's a big job. But, yeah, so I'm going to do it. And we're actually going to film it, which is interesting. We're going to make a program of it. Hopefully to encourage particularly other blokes who are hopeless.
Yeah. Do you have family history of it?
No, we don't, fortunately, which is a plus, because Rich, I think that is part of it, isn't it?
Yes, certainly we know that if people are diagnosed with bowel cancer at age 60, in their 60s or less, then that suggests there may be a family predisposition. So if that's the case, if you've got an infected family member who has been diagnosed in their 60s or less, and that's something you need to be thinking about and let your GP know about.
Let's look at the things that will happen with Pete. He will go along who will come along and see you, and then what will happen?
So after we've discussed the procedure and the risks and the benefits, then he'll have the joy of having something we call bowel prep, which is a pretty aggressive way of emptying out your bowel. So I won't want to be in his house when that's happening, because he might not take my name very kindly at that point. But it's really important that we clean the bowel out, because as you can imagine, if we're looking around the bowel and there's traffic coming the other way, it can mean it's difficult for us to be sure that we're seeing everything. And if we're going to do the procedure once, we want to do it properly, and we don't want to have to come back and do it again because the bowel's not clean.
Okay.
He'll then come in and the nurses will go through his health and make sure that everything's okay. He'll come into the room, we'll put a needle into his arm to give him some medication to make him sleepy and relax, and then we'll do the procedure.
Okay.
And that's done on a high definition screen in front, and we look around the bowel with this flexible instrument. It goes right round to where the small bowel joins the large bowel, which is where the appendix hangs off actually.
Oh, right.
So we go right round a big corner to get there. But it's a straightforward sort of procedure.
How long is that procedure?
It can vary depending on how twisty your bowel is, Pete. And looking at it from this angle, I'm not quite sure how twisty it would be. But usually it can be anywhere between, say, 15 minutes and 40 minutes, I suppose, at the longest. But it's a straightforward procedure. There are thousands of these done every year in Christchurch.
Okay. So when will Pete know what the diagnosis is?
So straight away after the procedure, once he's woken up, we'll be able to tell him about what we've found. So anything that's obvious that's there, we can tell him straight away, including whether he has a clear bill of health. If we find any abnormalities, be they subtle abnormalities or more serious ones, we have to biopsy those, which is a really easy thing to do. Patients don't feel it, and then we have to wait for those results to come back from the laboratory. But most things we can diagnose straight up at the time of the procedure, and people leave the procedure knowing exactly what's going on.
Okay, great.
One little gripe I've got, Kanita, is that it is actually quite expensive, isn't it? There's no government help for this.
So if people want to go through the private sector, then the cost can be up to $2,000 to have that done, which is, if you have health insurance, will obviously help cover that. If people have symptoms, though, and need a procedure done, then the public sector will take care of that. That's why if people have symptoms, bleeding from the bowel, diarrhoea, constipation that's new, they need to see their GP who can refer them, and there are very robust pathways for being referred through to the public sector to have that done. And most of the people who do the procedures in the public sector do it in the private sector as well. You get the same person, and the hospital does a really good job at doing that. But it can't do everyone, and it can't do the patients who want to be checked up for other reasons. It's really those who have symptoms who are more likely to need to be sorted out in the public system.
All right. So this week you've got your meeting on Thursday, and then it's happening next week.
Next Thursday, the following Thursday, yes. So we'll follow it, and you know, let's hope that it helps other people make up their mind. As I say, Richard's a trained man that should know his way around.
Yeah.
So you know, I'm not looking forward to it, obviously, but I think it's just a thing that has to be done.
All right, Richard, thank you so much for coming on the program. Pete, thank you so much for letting us follow you.
Pleasure.
Now I'd like to welcome to City Life Ed Butler. Now tell me about your work with Antarctica New Zealand.
Antarctica New Zealand operates all the logistics for New Zealanders heading to Antarctica, and we run a large research program, and we keep a 24/7 presence down in Antarctica at Scott Base.
What's the importance of keeping that presence down there?
There's a thing called the Antarctic Treaty, which New Zealand has signed up to, and that basically preserves Antarctica as a peaceful place for science, effectively. If we maintain a presence down there, it reinforces the Antarctic Treaty, and it makes sure that Antarctica is kept for peaceful purposes, and we don't go ripping it up and mining it and doing all sorts of things like that. In terms of the Canterbury economy and the New Zealand economy, we have the US program working out of Christchurch as well, because we're such a strong supporter of Antarctic science. They work out of Christchurch, and that's worth about, I think it's worth about 80 million to 150 million to the New Zealand and Canterbury economies every year.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, you've got a conference coming up, and it's titled The Value and Relevance of Antarctic Science. Tell me about this.
We try and hold a conference every year to make sure that we've got a really vibrant Antarctic community, Antarctic research community, and that they feed off each other and understand what's going on in other areas of research. One of the things we've been trying to do in the last few years is make sure that the science we do in Antarctica is valuable to the world and to New Zealand, and also relevant, and we can actually do something with that science.
Okay. Tell me how the science can help the community.
It sounds like a bit of a long bow, but doing science in Antarctica, that could be something useful that we can use in New Zealand. But one of the things that there are a bunch of different aspects to the science. One is climate change science. Every few years, an international body puts out estimates of how much sea level rise we're expecting, or how much the planet is likely to warm. The last assessment that was done, there was nothing about Antarctica, because we just didn't know what the impact of Antarctica on global change might be. So some of the work that Kiwis have done have increased the estimates of sea level rise by 0.5 metre in the next 100 years, because we know some of these things now. New Zealand's also a key player in the Antarctic tooth fishery, and the research that we do makes sure that we don't take too many fish, and that that's a well-managed, sustainable fishery.
Tell me what it's like down at Antarctica. I know you've been there several times. Tell me about your experiences down there.
The first time I went down, I think everyone who saw me must have thought I was a little bit simple, actually, because I walked around with this huge grin on my face. It really is like no other place I've ever been. Just the vastness of it, and it's cold, but not ridiculously cold. In the middle of summer, it sort of hovers between 5 and -5 degrees, so it's kind of like Christchurch this morning.
Yeah, it's pretty cold.
But it's, I mean, there's all the creature comforts that you'd expect at Scott Base. It's a well-appointed base, and we try and make sure that people are comfortable and well looked after.
What are they doing? Like, how can you get to go down there? Could I go?
You could go.
Really?
So there's a whole bunch of different ways. So if you want to be a tourist, you can book on board a vessel and either sail out of South America or New Zealand. There's trips that go out of New Zealand. I think Australia was doing flights over Antarctica, so tourist flights over Antarctica. And if you want to be part of the New Zealand Antarctic program, pretty much you either have to be in a trade, so either a builder, an electrician or a mechanic. And we take the base staff increase by about 30 every year. So there's planners and there's field trainers to make sure people are safe in the outdoors, plus also people to keep the base running. So you can either go down as a tradesperson or you can go down as a scientist. So I think we've got about 25 odd separate research programs that will be heading down to Antarctica this coming summer.
Wow. So looking at the tourists, you say Australia, they put flights over it, and there are ships that go there as well. Can you actually stay on Antarctica in there?
I'm not sure that the ships do stay, that the ship visits stay on Antarctica. You stay on the ship and you go, they fly you onto continental Antarctica. So you can walk around and see penguins and do all those sorts of things. It's relatively expensive. If you've got huge amounts of money, you can organise your own expedition, and there are places in South America that will fly you to Antarctica and you can drive to the pole or run a marathon or do any of those sorts of things.
Tell me about some of the Kiwis that are involved with the Antarctic New Zealand program. So
I guess one of the most well-known Kiwis that has been involved in the program was Sir Edmund Hillary. He set up Scott Base in 1957, and he was a huge supporter of the Antarctic program, and he had several trips down in the last few years of his life. And that was fantastic to have him with it. But more recently, one of the most high-profile scientists that we've had in Antarctica is a guy called Sir Paul Callaghan, who was the New Zealander of the Year.
We've had him on City Life as well,
yes,
yeah.
And he's a fantastic guy.
Yes.
And he did a lot of early work in Antarctica looking at sea ice and how sea ice breaks up. And the piece of equipment that he's probably most famous worldwide for is a piece of equipment that it's almost like an X-ray machine, portable X-ray machine. And he developed that so he could X-ray sea ice to see when it was failing and breaking.
Wow.
So he was part of the sea ice program in his early years, and then has transitioned to where he is now.
That's amazing. Now finally, why is this program important for New Zealand?
It's really interesting that New Zealand really sits across the stage from the likes of India, China, the US, and we're equals in this area. So from a diplomatic perspective, it's really, really important. But from a science perspective, we know very little about Antarctica. And the more we know about Antarctica, the more we can go towards protecting it and making sure that it's around for future generations.
All right. So tell me, when is this conference?
It's next week, and it starts on Monday. And it's in Hamilton this year. Last year it was in Christchurch, and a very successful conference. This year we've got over 100 people coming to the conference, and it should be a very successful conference again. Will there be info about the conference and what came up at the conference on your website? There certainly will be. So what's your website? The website is antarcticanz.govt.nz. Great. Ed, thank you so much for coming on the program. No worries. Thank you very much. After the break, we chat with someone from St John Ambulance. Welcome back to City Live. Now, I'd like to welcome Christine from St John. Now, you've just started with St John Ambulance. You were with Christchurch and Canterbury Tourism.
Yes, that's right, yeah. I just made a move over, obviously, to a completely different sector quite recently. And certainly some of the things that have struck me about St John and the learning process of joining is first and foremost just how many volunteers are involved with St John. There's a huge community of volunteers. And also that St John is a charity. I perhaps, like many New Zealanders, had just assumed that that they're fully government supported, and so to find that really St John do have to go out proactively getting funds has been quite an education.
And of course it was the annual appeal last week. How did that go?
Yeah, no, we've had, we had very good response. We had all the teams out collecting and doing various activities around New Zealand. And that is really, it's very much part of the annual appeal, which does cover effectively the deficit that St John runs the ambulance service on. So that's about $14 million. So the annual appeal is very important in that regard.
So that's how much you have to raise, 14 million?
Well, we through the annual appeal, that would, last year it raised about $1 million, but obviously we have a lot of other fundraising events throughout the whole calendar, throughout the whole year to really raise monies to cover that deficit.
Okay. Tell me how St John's was affected by the earthquake.
Yeah, obviously with St John, it's the main effect was obviously through deploying resources from all over New Zealand. We had support come in from across the country. People worked around the clock, a lot of volunteers involved. And so one of the things that we're looking forward to at the moment really is what do we have to do to get St John ready? We're initiating a campaign which we're calling the 3R campaign, which is repair, replace, be ready. So we need to ensure that we've got all of the equipment and support equipment that is required to really deal with, the ongoing events that we've been facing as a region.
So how the St John personnel going after the earthquake?
Oh, I think there's a sort of a huge spirit within St John that, people are really looking towards the future. Certainly a lot of the work that we're doing now is about, well, how do we ensure that we're best prepared, that we're ready, for what the future might present. But of course, we do have to remember that a lot of personnel have, like everybody in Christchurch, been affected in different ways, through loss of their homes and various other ways, and that it is an ongoing process. We have a whole new set of norms that everybody's dealing with here in Christchurch.
So was St John ready for this kind of event?
Yeah, certainly St John are, always, as the very nature of the service that they provide, as an emergency service. Yes, they were ready, but one thing that we need to focus on at the moment is, well, are they, best placed to be ready to face future events? And it took an extraordinary effort, in terms of personnel, but also in terms of all possible resources throughout the St John network. So now we're looking at, having to replace, an ambulance that, it might have to be replaced through what we might call wear and tear, just because it's been on the Christchurch roads that, of course, are now so bad that any vehicle will have a much shorter lifespan than possible. There'll be new communications equipment. There'll be equipment that we now know would better equip St John, with the job that they have to do.
Okay. Finally, let's look at more at the 3R campaign.
Yeah, this is a campaign that we've initiated to again sort of ensure that we are best prepared for the future. So the campaign is named Repair, Replace, Be Ready. So we've essentially listed all of the equipment, which encompasses anything from an ambulance to communications, satellite, IT style type equipment, also sort of even medical kits, even clothing, you know, that we've got the right type of waterproof clothing, etc. So we've put all of this together on a list, and it totals $3 million. And so our focus very much at the moment is ensuring that we can go out and get these funds together so that we can be prepared for the future.
Okay, and this is on a website?
Yeah, we are busy loading everything up onto the website, and this will officially launch next week. But we would encourage people to go into the stjohn.org.nz website, and from next week they'll be directed to where they can assist with this campaign. And we're very much hoping that companies get behind it. We're setting it up like a bridal list, like a wedding list of all of these pieces of equipment. So a company can go in and actually take a piece of equipment off the list. So it could be anything from a stretcher, a protective helmet, a suction unit. But we really need people big and small, you know, to companies big and small to come and help in this challenge.
All right, it'd be good to catch up with you in a couple of weeks and see how that's going.
Great.
Christine, thank you so much for coming on program.
Thank you.
After the break, we chat about after socks. You're back with City Life. Do you recognise these socks? They're getting a lot of publicity. Now, Kerry, tell me about these after socks.
Well, it was a great idea. We've done a number of things for the earthquake, but we needed to move on to another project. We had a couple of members come to us with an idea and a design, Justine and Joe Ottey. They've designed this sock with the Richter scale there. That's the actual 6.3 February quake Richter scale, sorry. And so we've now produced these socks. They're made locally in Ashburton by the New Zealand Sock Company. They're a 56% merino wool, so nice and warm, using good New Zealand wool. And we're selling them for $20 a pair. And the funds are all going to the Christchurch Mayoral Fund to rebuild Christchurch. So Rural Women New Zealand really proud to bring this new product. And we launched them last week, and so far we've sold 2,000 pair.
That is amazing, isn't it?
So absolutely thrilled. They've just taken off so well. We even had a group of members of Parliament on the steps of Parliament on Thursday wearing them.
I saw that.
Which was fantastic.
I thought that was really cool. Did you send them in there, or did you send someone in to sell them these socks?
We sent someone in there to see them, and they all came out and put them on and stood on the steps, which was fantastic. And Jackie Blue is one of the MPs, and she's now selling them in Parliament to other people. And they've been on the Parliamentary Daily newsletter, and they've done really well. And we've had orders come from around the world, USA, Hong Kong, the UK, everywhere. People are just so excited about them. We have them on our website, which is www.aftersocks.co.nz, and there's also an After Socks Facebook page, which is getting a tremendous feedback. People have a really good time with them.
That's good. Because it makes you feel good to be able to support Christchurch, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. I mean, there's so much needed to be done, so many people who need things, and it's going to take a long time and a lot of money, so we really proud that we could do something extra on top of what we've already done.
Yeah, definitely. Now, what else does Rural Women New Zealand get up to?
Well, other things we've done for the earthquake was offering respite accommodation. We also did the catering for the Farmy Army and Student Army when they were out shoveling silt.
That would have been a lot of work.
Well, it was huge. I mean, we were catered to 1,200 meals a day, and and a lot of that was just donated time and food and effort. So it was tremendous effort.
That is amazing, isn't it?
And it is. And we've also been knitting. We had our Communities Knitting Together project, which was about bringing communities back together. And we were encouraging people to have knitting bees, and we knitted warm items for people in Christchurch, and we've taken about 5 or 6 minivan loads through to Christchurch, and it's all been beanies and rugs and gloves and all sorts of things that are just helping to keep people warm this winter.
It's pretty cold here at the moment.
Oh, it is very cold, so they've been really well received, and so they've gone to groups all around Christchurch, and So now we're moving on with the socks as our next project as a fundraiser.
That's great.
So we've done a lot of that sort of work.
Did you think that these socks would be so successful?
Well, we were a wee bit nervous about them to start with. I mean, it's a new adventure. It's a big thing. Think, oh gosh, I don't know. But we thought, no, it's a great idea. It's a fun idea and something everyone can buy into. And they're a nice, lightweight thing that you can send overseas. So we're hoping to get a lot of support, and they've really taken off. So we're really rapt.
And you're giving yourself a good name as well, Rural Women New Zealand.
Yeah, we've been an organisation, we've been around since 1925, supporting rural communities through charitable activities and support for women and families, and also advocating on behalf of communities to make sure they still have access to important services such as health and education, social services and those sorts of things. So we do a lot to support rural communities.
Oh, that's good. How much from each pair of socks goes to the Earthquake Fund?
I think it's at least $5 a pair, maybe even more.
Yeah, that's
so,
good.
Yeah,
You've
really
sold
good.
already 2,000
pair. So it's a great achievement so far. And obviously we've placed another order, so we're hoping that'll keep going and they'll keep selling well.
Again, where can we find these socks?
They're on the website www.aftersocks.co.nz and we have a Facebook page also.
Who came up with the name? I've got to ask.
It was actually the people, Justine and Joe Otte, who designed them. They thought it was a bit of a play on words and it's quite fun.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
So
that's very cool. And actually, we're selling them here at CTV.
Yes, you are.
I just remember that. I've seen boxes of them.
Yes, there's a box here in reception selling them here. We're also looking at finding a retail outlet as well that we can sell them through, so it's a little more accessible to people who don't have computers.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So you've got different sizes.
We have a smaller size, about the 5 to 8, which is more of a ladies size, and then the 9 to 12 men's size. We're also looking, we've had a lot of requests for a children's size, so we're looking at trying to produce a smaller child size sock as well.
Okay, what's next on the list for Rural Women New Zealand? I can't even say the word.
I'm not sure. We'll get through this, and after that we're producing another cookbook. We had a very successful cookbook with a good spread last year, and that actually made it to New Zealand's bestseller list for the year, which was very exciting. So we're now going to produce a companion book to that with focusing on jams, preserves, pickles and sort of a very modern take on that, and that will be ready in April of 2012.
Fun.
Just in time for Mother's Day.
Right, yeah, perfect timing.
Absolutely.
All right, so we can get these socks online again where?
www.aftersocks.co.nz.
Facebook page?
Facebook page is the After Socks Facebook page.
Okay, and or they can come into CTV.
They can come to CTV.
Give us a call,
3777
033. Put your in your order with Marianne. I'm sure she'll be stoked to get your call. Kerry, thank you so much for coming on the programme. It's really good to meet the people behind these socks. And thanks for what you're doing for Christchurch.
Thank you.
Seeing as we're talking about rugby, I thought it was a great opportunity to get out of the studio and chat about it. Now, Pete, those Crusaders, what a roller coaster they're on.
Well, it is, Kenita, and it hasn't finished yet, that's the thing. But if we go right back, to September, for argument's sake, when we got first hit by the earthquakes, Crusaders were actually almost in training then, so it's been with them right through the campaign. It's a longer campaign than we've ever had in Super Rugby because they added an additional team in, so that had its own problems. And then, of course, things just went from bad to worse. They lost their home, AMI Stadium. In the foreseeable future, we don't know when they'll ever get back there. So they knew that they would be away, technically, for every game they play in this competition. Now, that's really hard. Should they go through, even now, if they don't go through and win it, I don't think that there's a competition in the world that has forced a team to go through what they've had to go through. Think about suitcases, think about even the bus trip to Timaru, the flight to Nelson. It all just compounds. And the thing we've always got to be conscious of, while all of Canterbury has suffered through the earthquake, these guys don't get an exemption sticker. Their homes have been decimated in some cases. There's been an awful lot of upheaval. They've had to go and stay with other people. And then you throw in, as I say, the roller coaster ride. There's a film or a book in it, I am sure. I really do, because it is such a unique story.
Let's look at Saturday night.
Yeah, they weren't sharp, to be fair, in the first half. Probably understandable. Once again, they're away. They knew, looking over their shoulder too, that they had this marathon trip where they have to go to Cape Town. Now, I've done it twice. It's a nightmare trip. It really is. So that was in the back of their mind, probably. They took on the Sharks, who have come the other way. They've come from South Africa down to here, and that's the hardest way to travel. No two ways about it, coming south. So they were pretty jaded, and they probably really only had, realistically, 20, 25 minutes in them. So they were going to give it their very best shot in the first 20, 25 minutes. The Crusaders would have been disappointed with the crowd. I would have thought they'd have filled Nelson. They didn't, and they deserved to have a full stadium after what they've been through. Unique opportunity for Nelsonians, particularly. It's knockout rugby, so, you know, and we don't have a tremendous record as All Blacks in knockout rugby at World Cup tournaments, I've got to tell you. So the heat was really on the Crusaders. I think the Sharks came down and they said, right, we'll throw the kitchen sink at them. We know we're going to run out of juice at some stage. Let's see if we've got enough points on. If we've got enough points on, then we can shut them out. Well, it didn't work that way. Crusaders were scratchy. I think the first half would be fair to say. Wasn't a great performance. Obviously, they got into the shed. Todd said to them, hey, listen, this is sudden death, guys. We can't just sort of come right next week, because there isn't a next week. So they did. They pulled their socks up, and they played pretty well in the second half. But you'd have to balance that with where the Sharks had come from, how tired they were, and flat by the second half. But they got there. Now, that's a remarkable story. I think everybody will say that really, and Blackadder says it right now, we haven't really put on a stellar performance in the whole competition. But hey, you can win and win ugly. And they've won ugly on some occasions. Talking to the players, they desperately want another crack at the Queensland Reds. They were grumpy about what happened in that game, should never have lost it in Brisbane, so they want a crack. Now, to do that, they've really got to go to hell and back to try and get a crack at it. And it may not work out that way. The Blues were lucky, they were at home. So they just took on the Waratahs, who I don't think fired a shot at them all the game. I thought they were very disappointing. So they got there. Now they go to the Reds, they win that, they're back home again, nice and easy. Spare a thought for our guys going across the Indian Ocean, taking on a pretty jolly good side in the Stormers, so they've got to win that. They don't come home, they then go to Brisbane or Auckland. So it's another 2 weeks. Now the drama that they really came into on Saturday night, throw in the earthquake, throw in the Chilean dust cloud, it's not tailor-made for travelling, to be honest. They got home from Nelson, they'd packed a bag in anticipation of going to South Africa.
Right.
Their wives, girlfriends, lovers all met them at the airport, topped up their bags with clothing and everything, only to find out that the Qantas flight they were going to Sydney on was grounded because of the Chilean edge. They really had to work overtime then to find how they could get out of godforsaken Christchurch, and Emirates came to the party and they managed to get a flight with Emirates. So they've flown to Sydney, they had one night in a hotel there, they then push from there to Johannesburg. They then have 5 hours downtime where you can't really do anything, and then fly down to Cape Town. Now, fortunately, they get there, South African time, about Monday afternoon. So the game's not till Saturday. So they do have a space, but it's still not your bed. It's still not home. You're thinking perhaps, you know, is there another quake while I'm away? We've got young families, we've got things. So it really has been, as I say, there's a book or a film in this thing.
Okay.
It's amazing. Just the true grit, and it really just escapulates the whole thing to me of the spirit of the Crusaders, the determination. Must have been so easy to have packed your tent up and just thought, well, we'll finish early this year. But that's not the style of the Crusaders. So, yeah.
Now, what should their focus be for this Saturday?
Well, once again, they're in the same knockout situation. It's a must-win, and it's a hell of a flight home if you haven't won. Tell the 95 boys that dropped the World Cup final. That trip home would have seemed as though it was about 6 weeks, you know, because what do you talk about in the plane? You know, gee, it's all over. Gee, we've lost, you know. It's depressing. They win, they're pumped. They really are. And all the way home, they'll be planning and strategising about how they can do this, that. And, yeah, it could be flat or it could be great. And yeah, it's either draft beer or champagne.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it, really. Yeah.
Now, I mean, I know you're quite tight with some of the Crusaders. How are they coping with everything that is going on here in Christchurch?
I think they're human beings.
Yeah.
We're stressed. The longer it goes on, the more stressed you become. They've got real pressure on them to do well as a Crusader unit. Todd Blackadder, I presume, has got aspirations to be an All Black coach. You want a Super 15 win on your CV, certainly helps. Don't forget that round the corner is the biggest tournament that probably in their lives will be a World Cup at home. So they're playing for places as well. They want the show to go on because you can show your skills for longer. If you're like, say, the Hurricanes or the Highlanders where it's all over, you don't get many chances to impress the selectors. So, yes, there's a lot on their shoulders, as well as life.
Yeah. All All right, Pete, thank you so much for that. Now, Saturday, when's the game?
Saturday, well, it's ridiculous. It's about 3 o'clock Sunday morning. You'll just be getting home from partying.
Wow, this is true.
Yes, and out and about. But yeah, it's on at 3 o'clock on Sunday morning. And as I say, must win. Who knows? The odds are stacked against them, but they have been all year.
Welcome back to City Life, and finally in the program, arts contributor Warren Feeney. Welcome back.
Hi, Kanita.
Now, Paper Graphica is our gallery this week. Tell me about this show.
Well, it's an exhibition of 4 artists of about probably 35 they represent, and they're all works on paper, which is typical of Paper Graphica because, I mean, it's a lithographic studio. That's the premise of it really is printmaking, even though they do exhibit other works, that is, you know, collage works or basically drawings and also paintings sort of on paper as well. So, and it's an interesting exhibition in the sense that it looks great. They all look really good together. We've got 4 images to look at, and one of them, because I had a look at the show last week, and one of them's a really stunning work by Nigel Buxton, who's a partner at Paper Graphica, and it's a work he did 10 years ago that I've never seen before, and he was saying, yeah, I should have got this out sooner, you know. So sometimes artists aren't always the best judge of their work, but this is a really stunning piece. So,
how does this gallery differ from other ones?
Well, it is a specialist print studio, and it was established by Marion Maguire, and she's a lithographer, but she's not just a lithographer, printmaker, she's a master lithographer. So essentially she graduated from Canterbury in the early 80s. She then went to the Tamarin Institute in Albuquerque in the States and studied lithography, and then came back and set up the studio. And she has artists, I mean, major artists from all over New Zealand will come and work with her. So she is the printmaker, if you like, and so people like Ralph Hodery, Bill Hammond, Gretchen Ulbrich, who there's a work of in this show. Those are people that have major careers as painters, but with her they've collaborated, and so you have this kind of unique body of work by these artists that sits alongside what they normally do. Yeah.
Sorry, it's not just New Zealand artists though, is it?
No, it isn't. No,
yeah.
There's one of the ones we'll have a look at is a German artist, and that is Bodo Kursig. He's from Trier in Germany, and he came out last year and worked with Marion Maguire in the studio and developed a body of prints too. So, yeah.
Is printmaking a relevant art form in the 21st century? Yeah,
that's an interesting question because, you know, one of the most fundamental things that artists have ever done is actually making a mark on a surface, and you know, even just making a rubbing with a spoon or something like that over a bit of paper on a surface. That's the fundamental aspect of printmaking. It takes an impression, and kind of really it's sort of medieval in many ways. And it's been interesting because in the last 10 years, printmakers have kind of struggled with that. With digital media, there's no longer any need to. And I think what's really interesting is the way that so many printmakers are still committed politically. It's a relatively cheap form of making a work of art, and it's also where you can reproduce and distribute them. And so it has lots of advantages that are still very relevant to today. There was a great show of printmaking came out last year, basically a sort of a Pacific Rim printmaking exhibition, and a lot of the works were very much concerned with political issues in other countries and also in New Zealand. So I always kind of feel like with printmaking, in some ways it sort of sneaks under the radar and does lots of things that are very relevant to people's lives in a way that sometimes maybe painting or sculpture doesn't. Yeah. Tell me about the exhibition that's on at the moment. Well, we've only got 4 works. There's probably only 6 or 7 artists in the show, and they've been changing it fairly regularly. They've also been looking for works that aren't going to fall off the walls because they're worried about, you know, the weight and everything at the moment with the quake. So, but it's a good sort of it gives you a good sense of the range of works that they do exhibit. So should we have a look at them? Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. I think the first one this was a bit of a discovery because I'd not heard of this artist. This is Margaret Silverwood, and she's from Whanganui. She completed a degree in printmaking at the art school in Whanganui, and she's also worked as probably won't be surprised, as a children's book illustrator as well. And she's published in Korea, the United States, Britain, New Zealand, so you know there's an international connection. This work's called Pets, and it's an etching, not a lithograph, so it's an etching, and she's interested in, well, one of the things that's a key concern for her is the relationship people have with nature and the natural world. And I like this image because obviously it does have a kind of an appeal as a curious sort of children's illustration. But it's also very disturbing as well, just the size of that that mouth and the child, and what's going on between the two, because both of them look very uncomfortable. And of course, shifting the scale of those as well, the mouse and the child, also makes it immediately it's very engaging and beautifully drawn too. You can sort of see that she's kind of the line has wandered and almost without lifting the pencil.
It's very good.
Yeah. And I think the next one, now this is Marion Maguire, and this is interesting because I'd mentioned her partner Nigel Buxton had an earlier work I hadn't seen. This is a work from the early 1990s. It's actually a woodcut, not a lithograph, and she did a whole series around that time based on gates and doors, and this is one of them. It's a really large print, probably at least about 1 metre in width. But it's a very large block of wood she's carved into, and it's just the notion of gates and journeys and doors and things opening, and of course you can't quite see where you're going to, so it's a notion, I guess, of a sort of a metaphorical journey through life, etc., and what lies ahead. And the next work, this is Bodo Korsig, and it's untitled. And he's really interesting. I was reading a piece about him that he's a sculptor as well. He works on a really big scale, and in fact he works on such a large scale. Apparently he uses a steamroller to make his prints.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I'm not 100% convinced about that story, but it gives you an idea of how large the blocks of wood are that he's carving into. So I think this is one of the works he actually did with Papergraphica last year. So he's interested in kind of human biology and thinking, and he said that one of the things that's of interest to him is the notion of human emotion like fear and panic, and then the notion that that's how people may think and respond to circumstances, and yet the whole notion of the brain is kind of just a biological scientific entity. So this could be sort of bits and pieces of a biological form floating around. It's interesting when you see his sculptures because they're not that much different in terms of the kind of biomorphic shapes to these prints. But I really like this. It's dramatic, and I just like the way the whole thing is weighted down to the bottom with that really lovely clear white section at the top. And the last one, this is Gretchen Ulbrich, and this is called Mycelia, and this is a work from 2004. She has a large body of work in painting. I'd mentioned before about painting and printmaking. She's a large body of work in painting based on these kind of circular shapes. And I mean, she's been working this territory now for about 20 years, and they could be either, they could be egg shapes, or they could just be big circular shapes with beautiful surfaces. She's really good at working materials, and she enjoys lithography. She was saying that there's an exhibition that Marion Maguire and her put together of her prints, and from 2000 called Crossing the Divide. And it was just an exhibition of the prints, and the prints work really well. They share a lot in common with the paintings, but the paintings tend to be massive, and of course the prints are much more, I guess, more sort of domestic and more intimate.
Okay. So Papergraphica, where can we find it?
That's in Beeley Ave, and I think it's 193, but maybe just check that. But it's located obviously right on the edge of the city. So open from Wednesday to Saturday. Yeah.
Now, Sofa Gallery, tell me what's going on there.
Yeah, Sofa Gallery have really stepped up. With galleries closed and very little on at the moment, they are running one show a week from now until September. It ends up being around about 14 shows. And some of those are master students, but they've also got exhibitions coming in from overseas. There's a photography show opening tomorrow, which it's by a Turkish photographer. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name, but it's essentially, it's interesting that there's that much activity, and I think, full credit to them for doing that. It's great. I mean, now there's an opportunity if people are looking for an exhibition and to see something new and something exciting. I've seen a promo for the show that opens the following week, which I think is 3 postgrads, and that looks really good. Okay. As in, and I can't remember the name of the artist, but as in chocolate icing and cakes and things like that as sculpture. So I'm looking forward to that.
That sounds like my type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, a new gallery and art space. Tell me about that.
Well, at the moment we're working on just getting the rooms all jibbed out. This is for 241 Morehouse Avenue.
Okay.
We'll be opening the gallery on the 19th of July.
Okay.
And the studio spaces, which are going to need some clearing out, they'll be available, I would think, from early August. But I'm putting out a notice this week. So if artists are interested in looking for a studio space, then they can email me. And also they might want to actually think about maybe applying as a group. So because we can take 6 artists in this large area and then divide the studios up, if a group of artists wanted to put in one application for that, then we'd look seriously at that as well.
Okay, and your email address?
It's warrenfeeney@extra.co.nz.
Excellent. Thanks for coming on the programme. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.
That is City Life for today. You can get in touch with us, connetta@ctv.co.nz. You can give us a call, 3777 033, or you can write to us, PO Box 1100 Christchurch. We're now on demand. You can go to ctv.co.nz and click on demand. We're also on Facebook, CTV's City Life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.